airwaves in your market become more and more crowded. It's time to break it open and really stand out. It's here.
Mainland 98.3 FM, the sound of Lagos.
Good morning and welcome to Trends in the Papers on 98.3 Mainland FM. Time check right now. Well, it's almost 7:42, but it's 7:41. Okay, 7:42 right now, and it's time for us to look through the trending stories, the major trending stories across the papers this morning. Today, the beautiful 12th day of the month of May 2023. Things are looking beautiful. We're already in the second week. As we advance into the third week, we wish you all the best and we hope that your dreams do come true. This is Mainland 98.3 FM, and just as mentioned earlier, it's Trends in the Papers. We'll be looking through the major trending stories, and to put analysis or to give analysis to the stories that we'll be looking through, we have Fuhad Saheed joining in via the phone line. Good morning, Fuhad.
Good morning, Sandra.
Yes.
And thank God it's Friday.
Yes, sir. Yes, but work continues. But anyways, yeah, that's the voice of Fuhad Saheed, who will be our analyst this morning. My name still remains Mobola, Sandra. We'll be running this up until 8:30, and then by 8:40 we'll come back for Mainland Focus, where we'll pick one or two major trending stories, put some spotlight on it, open up the phone line for you to be a part of the conversation. In the meantime, let's look through the major trending stories across the papers. I'll start with the Guardian newspaper. The major headline on the front page of the Guardian says, underutilization, debts hobble $4.12 billion rail rehabilitation projects. Fuhad, you know, in this end times of this administration, there have been a lot of figures. The end times of this administration, there have been a lot of figures, you know, being thrown around, and it's just every time it just keeps getting higher. We keep hearing, you know, one interesting figure or the other. All right, but then this particular one is looking at the transport sector, or looking at the rail lines. Now, the story, according to the front page, is on page 6, but then it's not on page 6, it's on pages 4 and 5 of the Guardian, just in case you're looking for the story. I think there's an error, there's a typo error on the front page. But then, the story is looking at the revival of rail lines and the fact that it was one of the several promises of the president pre-2015 general elections. And most symbolic has been the completion of the Abuja-Kaduna rail line, the Lagos-Ibadan stretch, the Warri-Ajakuta rail line, and the completion of the 44.7 kilometer Abuja metro line. However, this story is looking at the cost of reconstruction and the details of the loan facilities, especially the security challenges that have made these infrastructures easy targets for insurgents, and the threats have rendered the projects grossly underutilized, commercially unviable, and of major concerns for sustainability. Fuhad, looking at this, what are your thoughts as regards our rail system? Do you think this, all of these reasons put down, you know, justifies why we have billions of dollars of projects not being used?
Well, Sandra, again, we talk about the performance of this government in the last 8 years. Because
yes.
I think it's right to say they spent 8 years. Because again, we have, I think, about 17 days till the end of this this particular government.
Yes.
And you know, the first thing when you are elected as a president on the day of swearing in, the first statement you make, or the first allegiance that you swear to, is the security of lives and properties of the people. And the reason why that is the most important part of what you are made to swear to as a president is that, look, every other thing comes under security. No matter how laudable your idea is, no matter how beautiful your programs are as an administration, if you are not able to guarantee the security of lives and properties of the people, then everything else does not matter. So we borrowed Chinese loans we were so happy to, complete some of these, what you can call very good projects. Because again, if you were to ask, representatives or spokespersons of this.
Hello? No, I can't hear you, Fuad. Just in case you can hear me, I can't hear you. I would have to reconnect with you, shortly. Stay with us. Thank you very much. You're listening to Mainland 98.3 FM, and we're looking through the major headline on the front page of the Guardian newspaper, and it says that underutilization and debts hobble over $4.12 billion rail rehabilitation projects. We're looking at the fact that despite the achievement of the President Buhari-led administration, trying to revive our rail transport parts, the fact is that the cost of the projects, safety threats, and all of that, is making it difficult for them to, actually keep this promise. Well, promise made or promise kept. That's the conversation we're having. I think we have Fuhad back. All right. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah. So what I was saying is that, look, if you were to ask the spokesperson of this particular administration about their achievement, I'm sure before they mention 1, 2, 3 things, the rail projects will be one of the projects that they will mention as one of the major achievements of this administration. But here you are, even from reading the story, the terrible security situation in the country has made a mess of that achievement. And it's understandable. Remember that when the Abuja Kaduna attack happened, train attack happened, that rail line was shut for almost, I think, about 4 or 5 months without any activity. And that in itself also affected other rail lines because people were a bit apprehensive about using them. So every other thing comes under security. No matter how beautiful your program is, no matter how laudable your idea is about how to transform the country, if you are not able to guarantee the security of lives and properties of the people, then every other thing it comes as a complete failure. And that's why we say that, look, one of the biggest failure of this government, during the post-mortem of this government now, in the last 8 years, is that Nigerians are now more insecure than when they came in. Nigerians are more insecure. The level of insecurity in the country has gotten to a point where we need to really, really declare a state of emergency on it. Because I remember that when this government was coming in, the major security threat to Nigerians at that time was the Boko Haram insurgency in the northeast. And, there was a very big promise then that they were going to fix that, they were going to quash Boko Haram and all of that. Here we are now. We've moved from the northeast now. It's now widespread in almost all parts of the country. Kidnapping is widespread. There's high level of insecurity in the southeast. The northwest is not faring better. In fact, I'm sure as you read some of the headlines, you're going to get to some security concerns happening in the northwest as we speak, with bandits and terrorists fleeing as there's a military onslaught going now. And then the northeast is not even faring better. So I must say that, look, unfortunately, we built this rail line with Chinese loans. And I don't know what the repayment package is, whether we're even going to be able to repay these loans because of the fact that the rail lines are heavily underutilized because of security concerns. So again,
Fuhad,
yes,
aside from the security concern, there's another issue that the government is raising as regards why they are having or they are struggling with reviving our rail transport system in the country, and that is the cost. The cost of this project, due to the fact that Nigeria already has a huge debt burden. So the fact that, yes, we have insecurity, which are properly, analyzed, and also vandalism. That's another issue as well. People have been stealing the rails. I don't know. Remember that story. People have been cutting the rails and taking the rails away. Yes, so that's another issue. Now, the cost as well is also another, issue that has been brought up as regards, the reason why it's a problem for the government. Now, I'm going to ask this question for Fuhad now. Do you think that the government should look at the approach of the private sector involvement as regards design, construction, and operation of our railway? Because according to this report, we have here that the railway remains the only sector that is yet to be liberalized, because the NRC remains the operator and the regulator and everything of, yes, of what happens in the real sector. So do you think that the private sector involvement as regards design, construction, and operation is the best way, would be the best way for the government to go?
I agree completely, Sandra, and I'm surprised that we've not really involved the private sector, what you can call the private-public partnership arrangement, to constructing our roads. Again, one would wonder why the government decided to go into borrowing to fix the rail lines. Because again, one of the most viable businesses for any private sector investment should be transportation. Because transportation is almost like a sure money.
Yeah.
People would always want to travel, want to move around. In fact, people would even argue that between the telecom sector, the power sector, and the transportation sector, which one is the most viable? Because these are sure monies for any private investor. People will want to communicate. People need energy for a lot of things, and they also need movement. They want to move around. So, but the question again, Sandra, just put yourself in the position of a private investor who has been called to look at the potentials of our rail line across the country. Okay, come and put your money, all of that. And you have this level of insecurity. You put your money as a private investor, you are able to fix the rail lines, get the coaches in, and then at the end of the day, people cannot use it because there's level of insecurity. You see that everything goes back again to the ability of the government to secure Nigerians and those facilities. So I agree that, yes, we should look into the PPP arrangement where we bring in private investors to take care of this. The way we've done, the way we've done with the telecom sector. Because again, look at how we've been able to reform the telecom sector. Again, there are still glitches here and there, but at least it's one sector that has employed a lot of Nigerians. Communication in Nigeria is done properly because it's in the hands majorly of private sector participants. Unfortunately, the energy sector, because of political patronage, we can't really say that of the power sector. But I think the transportation sector needs a lot of private partnership and investment. But it may not be viable to a discerning private investor if we can't fix our security issues. And that's the problem again.
Thank you very much, Fuhad. That's the major headline on the front page of The Guardian. Underutilization debts hobble over $4.12 billion rail rehabilitation project. Stories on pages 4 and 5 of The Guardian newspaper. Moving on now, we also have here Nigeria's oil output hits record low as Angola takes the lead. So, well, I don't know what to mean.
Yes, he did. He was praising GMB of NNPC. They said he did well.
He did well.
No,
yes, every ministry, every department, every agency so far, as regards scorecard, has been saying we were amazing in the last 8 years. In the last 8 years. But here we are now. This particular report is saying that attempts by federal government and the NNPCL to tame oil theft and boost crude production may be yielding low returns as output has plunged to a record low. So now what we have is that OPEC, in their monthly bulletin that was released yesterday, said Nigeria's oil production plunged to 999,000 barrels per day in April, which is the lowest in the current year. And it's the revenue from this strategic sector at some point used to account for 90% of Nigeria's total income. And now revenue at now is standing from the non-oil sector is about 59%, while from the oil sector is about 41%. So what it means now is that if you dig deeper into all of this, it just means that while Nigeria is producing 999,000 barrels per day, that was in April, Angola's output stood at 1,085,000 barrels per day, indicating that Nigeria is now no longer the top producing in the the sub-Saharan Africa.
I'm not surprised, Sandra, or would I say I'm surprised? I don't know where to even stand now on this particular issue. Just yesterday we did a review where Alhaji Aliko Dangote and Mr. Tony Lumelu were praising to the high heavens the GMB of the NNPC.
Yes.
Oh, he did well and all of that. I'm not surprised about this particular report because we have not been able to do 1 million barrels per day. We've been struggling around 900,000. 1 million barrels per day. I think our quota is supposed to be around 1.3 million barrels per day.
Mm-hmm.
But again, you need to ask the question, Sandra. What has happened to polo arrangement? Because again, if my memory serves me right, we are paying about 4 billion naira to him every month. To ensure we are able to properly, account for our crude export. So as the polo arrangement failed, that's the question we need to ask ourselves. Then again, what about our naval officers, the security operatives, and every arrangement that we're supposed to create to ensure that we are able to, at least meet? Because the problem with not meeting our quota is this, Sandra. The first one is that number one, it will be dwindling oil revenue for the country. That's why we say we're about 41% now revenue from the oil sector, something that accounts for about 90% before. Unfortunately, too, with the OPEC release now, it means that we can't even demand for our quota to be, to be increased. Because for you to justify an increment in quota, you must be able to meet the quota that you have been given. So if you are not able to meet your quota, you can't even demand for an increment in quota. Mm-hmm. And imagine again, Angola has now surpassed Nigeria. We kept talking about Angola, and people think, we are just overstating issues. What is it that Angola is now doing that Nigeria cannot do? A small Angola, in comparison to Nigeria, has overtaken us. The same Angola, whether through consortium or private arrangement or public arrangement, has functional refineries. So it means that even if their countries are able to refine locally, here we have no functional refineries of our own. We can't even extract the crude and account for it properly. Sandra, I really don't know what the government can do again. And these are guys that take part on the nation. We pay them heavily. They get all manner of allowances. They get all manner of extra codes. And at the end of the day, the only result you get from them is excuses for failure upon failure. We cannot do 1 million barrels per day, Sandra. I have my fears, really. And we say we don't have money. Oh, we are talking about looking for revenue. This is sure money. I mean, people cannot even revise. What does it take to extract and export and account for it properly? Is that rocket science again?
All right. A lot to talk about as regards this, because if you look at it, they're looking at the oil theft and vandalism is the major reason for.
Like Damilola would say, are the people stealing the oil? Are they ghosts and spirits? Is that the question? Are they ghosts and spirits? Is it that? Sandra.
But even if they're ghost and spirit, there's a reason why we had Tom Polo. Maybe he's also a ghost and spirit to help us to reduce it. But then,
ghost and spirits are not easy to deal with, though.
It's the child of fire that you send to the fire. So.
But Tom Polo is not a spirit; he's a human being.
But what's happening with our 4 billion?
Well, I don't know. That was the question, because I think we have that arrangement, and it should be working. By now, I think that we should be meeting our quota and be on a proper standing to demand for an increment in the quota. But here we are now doing something thousand barrels per day. I'm sure we need to look inwards, really, because again, sometimes you see some of these stories and you wonder, what are these guys doing in government? What exactly are they giving back to the country in terms of performance?
More details as regards Nigeria's oil put hitting a record low in April as Angola takes the lead. On page 24 of the Guardian newspaper. Let's keep moving now. We also have here intrigues, protests as immigration boss gets controversial tenure extension. And that is on page 7. Thought we were done with this particular one. We had, a story that was similar sometime last year. I think I remember quite clearly. But now what we have is that following expiration of his 1-year tenure extension on April 24, 2023, it appears that the retired Controller General, he's the same person. Remember the story last year, Fuhad?
The same person, yeah.
So it's the same person. So now he has retired, but he's not tired.
He should be tired.
As he remains in office in a fresh elongation by the President, Muhammadu Buhari. Let's not forget that a month ago, there was a memo from the Civil Defense, Fire, Immigration and Prison Service Board, which is under the Federal Ministry of Interior, directing the Comptroller General to vacate his seat on or before April 24, and hand over to the most senior officer in the agency. All right, but then in a dramatic turn of events, a statement from the PRO of the service, Tony Akuneme, on April 28th said, and I'm quoting now, President Buhari has approved extension of tenure for the CG Issa Jere Idris till the end of the administration on May 29, 2023. The approval was contained in a letter signed by the Chief of Staff to the President, Professor Ibrahim Gambari, and Mr. Jere has since resumed duties at the service headquarters. But as it is now, that extension appears to have sparked discontent, with some top-ranking officers of the service and others condemning the development. Aside from Mr. Idris now of the Immigration Service, there's also this AIG that was also promoted recently till next year or so. Now, looking at extension of public service,
public servants,
yes, looking at that and the fact that some people are still crying that, oh, we need extension of retirement age, so that for certain reasons that is best understood by them. All right, and then looking at the fact that this person is remember the story last year. The problem was that the senior officers were looking at the fact that if this guy doesn't leave, they can't move. They can't move.
Stop where they are.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so now we have another extension now till the end of this administration. So what are your thoughts as regards extension of public service holders by the president, especially when you have less than how many days to leave office?
You see, Sandra, there are two things here. The legality of the extension is one issue that we need to talk about. How legal are these actions of the president to extend the tenure of public servants that are due for retirement? Is this something that he can do at will? Is this something that he can just do and extend at will? You understand what I'm saying? It's very, very important that we need to ask this question, because how legal are the actions of the president to extend the tenure of public servants who are due for retirement? That's the first issue. The second issue is, what are the justifications for the extension? Is it about performance? Is it that the guy has so much performed to the point that, look, his service is still needed? Or there are no other junior officers who can step into that position and outperform him or even do better than him? That's another question.
Or there's no time for reappointment since the tenure is almost ending. Is that a possibility?
And then why do you extend when you have just about how many days to go now? And then the other issue is that, look, for others who are, junior officers to him, because when he leaves, somebody steps up. It creates room for other public officials at that level to also step and move on that hierarchy. And that was what happened last year. The more you extend this tenure, some others will remain stuck.
And their years of service will be counting.
It, of course, some of them might even retire because this guy is still there. They might even retire without stepping up to that position. So, but again, these are some of the untidy behavior that have been known with this particular government. There's been, in fact, the IG, there are also questions about the IG, whether its tenure has ended or not. I'm not really sure. I'm sure there's also a problem about the fact that the tenure of the IG is being extended, because I think it's already due for retirement. So, but you need to ask yourself, why extend the tenure of these public officials? What are the justifications? Is it about performance? Is it that there are no other public officials in those agencies that can step up and also do a better job, or probably doing something better than what is being done? But again, for some of us, we can't wait to have a breath of fresh air. Sandra, I think that's where I'm going to end it.
I'm not going to ask where the breath of fresh air is coming from, but then more details of intrigues and protests as immigration boss gets controversial tenure extension. The story is on page 7. Moving on very quickly now, we also have Let's Reclaim Stolen Mandates. PDP's Lost Glory. Atiku tax party members. And that story is on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper. That's from former vice president and presidential candidate of the PDP, who has charged the party to remain determined and focused on retrieving his mandate at the Presidential Election Petition Court, insisting that the PDP won the election. All right. Well, there's a whole lot, coming from that. But then there's another angle to this report. Meanwhile, former Lagos State Chairman of the Labour Party, Olukayode Salako, yesterday said that the culture of operation in Labour Party is worse compared with other political parties such as the APC and PDP. The culture of operation in the Labour Party. You know, we've always had this conversation, Fuhad. Do you think it has to do with the fact that, you had the introduction of Peter Obi into the Labour Party, who then came in with some other members of different parties who tried to, because they wanted to support Peter Obi, then, there was the influx of different parties, members from different parties into the Labour Party. Okay, so what are your thoughts as regards, the culture of operation in the Labour Party? Do you think it has to do with the fact that, we had these, foreign bodies coming in from different parties that, do not really align with the Labour Party ideology, or the fact that, generally speaking, the Labour Party just doesn't really know, how to put politics in place?
Well, the new entrants or the newcomers into the Labour Party, and I use the word newcomers, referring to people that came to join the party. Probably a lot of them followed Mr. Peter Obi into the party. And not actually even the problem of the party. The problem of the party is the existing structure. People that formed the party and have run the party before the likes of Mr. Peter Obi and the rest joined them. And basically what we are seeing with the Labour Party is the fact that, look, politicians will always be politicians, irrespective. Because what has now happened is that, the little success that the Labour Party has been able to achieve, and I use the word little without sense of responsibility, now these politicians cannot even manage it. Because I'm sorry, the crises are too early in the day. This is a party that is still struggling to really find its footing, that is still, putting itself together to be one of the major opposition political parties in the country. And here you are, they have too much crisis to deal with. At this stage where they are supposed to be consolidating on the achievements of the last election. Because this is supposed to be a time when the Labour Party is supposed to position itself, for example, as that real alternative for Nigerians. And I read there are people who are already speculating that, going forward, we may see a situation, if this crisis remains and is not resolved by the leadership of the party, you may see a Peter Obi eventually leaving the party for them. Because the reality is that Peter Obi is Peter Obi. The Labour Party is the Labour Party. They are just, a beneficiary of what the obedience has been able to bring to the table in the political space. So because the infighting, the name calling, the allegations and counter allegations just show that, look, these guys may not be able to manage the success that the Labour Party was able to record in the last election. And if a member of the party is already saying that their own operation is even worse than the APC and the PDP, then that's a lot of things for us to really ponder on.
Thank you very much, Fuad. More details on page 6 of The Guardian. And finally, from The Guardian, very quickly, NAS leadership. Aspirants adamant despite APC's promise to revisit zoning. And that is on page 6. That's actually the major headline across all the papers, across the rest of the papers this morning. So I'll just take it all together, so we can just, properly dissect. What it says here on page 6 of The Guardian is NAS leadership. Aspirants adamant despite APC's promise to revisit zoning. And we have riders there that says, 1, will disobey APC. Yari, Kalu, others declare. APC North Central rejects zoning speaker to Northwest. Umahi, let's hold fire. APC will address NAS controversy. Huriwa queries EFCC over unconcluded probe on Akpabio. So a lot of fishes flying out of the water right now over the fact that the APC decided to endorse. Is it endorse now or push forward?
I don't want to help you. Just look for the word. I don't have any words for what they did too.
I don't know if endorse or suggested or proposed candidates. Like Fuad said, micro zoning. Because
no. What the APC did was an imposition. Simple. It was just an imposition.
So now this decision, that came from the National Working Committee led by Senator Abdullahi Adamu, of course, and well, they've been tying it to the president-elect as well, that he has one, influence. He was influential in the selection or the imposition or whichever word. So now, coming from this, we have here that. Three of the Senate President aspirants, Abdulaziz Yari, Orji Uzokalu, and Sani Musa, attended the rally, while Osita Izunaso, who was indisposed, sent in apologies. Now, despite assurances of a reset, the senators vowed to disobey the party's directive to have Godswill Akpabio as the next Senate President. So there's a letter now that's been signed by the dissenting lawmakers. They have asked the party to correct the mistake or face the consequences, warning that while they have never violated the party, the leadership should brace themselves for a surprise on election day, because the disgruntled hopeful will openly defy the party. How do you think the APC is going to fare as regards properly managing this situation?
They created the problem in the first place. They created this particular problem because, again, how do you go this brazen to impose members on elected assembly members without consultation? Because one of my own prediction was that the APC was not going to make an announcement, zoning and then micro zoning the way they've done, if for sake of a better word now. I said what they probably would do is to have their own preferred candidate, but leave it open for the members to eventually decide on in the form of election. But for the party to have made this kind of announcement, not only to zone those principal positions to regions, but to also put candidates on that ticket already. Because, it's one thing to zone. You say, okay, for this position, we are putting it on this zone. But to now even choose candidates already to say this is the candidate for the party, without consulting and getting the approval of other party members, says a lot about internal democracy within the APC and how they even see the assembly. Because I want to ask, does the APC think the National Assembly is only for APC members? Are they aware that they are also opposition members who form an integral part of the parliament of the National Assembly? Are they also aware that the Constitution allows that opposition members can also actually become Senate President if they are not able to play their politics well? Because how do you take these kinds of decisions without bringing all elected members to the table to discuss and agree on it? And then, for the sake of fairness, equity, and justice, in this their announcement now, where is the fairness, where is the equity in what the party has announced? If you give the Senate President to the South-South, you gave the Deputy Senate President to the Northwest, you gave the Speakership to the Northwest, and then you gave the Deputy Speakership to the Southeast. What of the North Central zone of the country? Where is the equity in that one now? So, I think yesterday Saheed asked me a question. If the leadership of the party can, reverse what they have done, and I say, I'm sorry, I think they've gone too far into this controversy to be able to manage it. Because so now that they've announced candidates, what are they going to now say? To say, okay, all right, we have changed our mind, this one should go to this one again. How can they amend or resolve this crisis now? The only thing that they will try to do is to go into what we call political bargaining. What kind of bargaining? To say, okay, for those that are dissatisfied, we're going to give you juicy, quote and unquote, now, juicy committees. Okay, we give you chief whip and all of this. And again, I say all of these things are just sharing of positions among politicians. But another issue, Sandra, that we need to focus on, and which people have been talking about, is that was this a decision of the president-elect, Ajibola Tinubu? How much of his influence led to this announcement of the party? Because there are people who say that, look, hope we are not going to be seeing a repeat of how politics is played in Lagos, where every decision of the party ends and starts at Babylon, and it's a decision of one man. This is national politics, I say again. This is not Lagos politics. And I think if this decision of the APC is coming from the influence of Ajibola Tinubu, I think he needs to have a rethink and understand that, look, national politics that concerns all Nigerians is far, far more complicated, intriguing than the way politics is played in Lagos. I rest my case.
It's okay. Well, more details on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper. I'll take a break here because the story still continues on the front pages of the rest of the papers that I have here the Punch and Vanguard, they also have something to say as regards the National Assembly leadership. All right, so stay with, this is Mela 98.3 FM, the sound of Lagos. You're listening to Trends in the Papers. We're looking through the major stories, across the papers this morning, the major trending stories across the paper this morning. We're just through with the Guardian newspaper. My name is Mobola Sandra. I have Fuhad Saheed, giving us the analysis via the phone line. Don't forget that you can join the show live on Facebook and YouTube. Mainland 98.3 FM. You can as well drop your comments there. Okay, so now let's move on to the Punch newspaper. The major headline there says, National Assembly leadership. APC moves to pacify aggrieved aspirants. Stop agitations. Party will revisit zoning formula. Adamu begs aspirants. So that's why I said that, we can't really finish that particular story from what the Guardian, reported, because the Punch also has its own perspective to that particular one. Well, what we have now is that the APC has begun negotiations with senators contesting the presidency of the Senate for the National Assembly. And what we have is that the national chairman of the party had a meeting with aggrieved senators, or with the aggrieved aspirants, not all of them now, with the aggrieved Senate presidency aspirants in Abuja, saying that the party would study the protest letter that was submitted as part of fresh consultations, and they would make amends where necessary. So the lawmakers in attendance includes former Zamfara Governor Abdulaziz Yari, the Senator-elect representing Imo West, Osita Izunaso, Sani Musa of Niger East, Umar Sadiq of Kwara North, and the Senate Chief Whip, Ojus Okalu. So as it is now, the chairman of the party is assuring the aspirants that they will go back to the drawing board and review the decision taken regarding the zoning. What was done needs some changes or reviews. We will take a look at what was necessary. We will take a look at what necessary compelled us to do by the grace of God, Adamu assured. So as it is now, there's a drawing board to go back to, or it has been wiped.
Which board? There's no board anywhere, Sandra. At the point where this decision was taken, and then of course an official letter was drafted and announced by the party, they knew that this backlash was going to come. If you understand the way the minds of politicians work, they will protest. Don't mind them. Let them go to hell. But we'll behave as if we are listening to them, to play the politics of the National Assembly, working with the opposition elected members, principal officers of their own choice, political parties, to see what they were going to do about this in sort of the 80 way again.
All right. Well, I have to read this. Very important. Now, in the report, we also have here, Adamu promised to address the issues raised by his visitors when the president-elect, Bola Tinubu, returns to the country. Now, I'm looking at this now. He's saying that the voice of the president-elect is an essential voice. That's what he said. We must accommodate him the best we can. I will not compromise on that. He went further to say, I cannot preempt that. That's looking at the importance of Tinubu's input. I will wait until we hold that meeting with Mr. President-elect, the same team that we had the same meeting with. If we need to enlarge the committee, we'll do so. We'll be better informed through contributions that will be made. Now, what is the importance of the President-elect's input on this issue?
No importance, Sandra. We're even treading on the dangerous path now. Because as it is now, what the APC is telling us, that the president-elect is the one to choose the leadership of the legislature. That's what they are telling us. What the president-elect should concentrate on how he's going to be able to put his cabinet ministers together. That is what he should be drafting now, putting the names of people that will work with him in the executive, as ministers, as appointees for different agencies and parastatals. That should be his major concern. I agree that he has to keep an eye on what happens as far as leadership of the National Assembly is concerned, but not to the point where he is expected to be the one to choose the leadership, that organ of government. Because again, if we are talking about the independence of the legislature, The independence starts from the ability of members to choose their own leadership without interference. If indeed we are serious about guaranteeing the independence of the legislature, we have to also ensure that the process of electing leadership of that assembly must be independent and free from any hijack, as you are seeing it already. Because I see a situation where the leadership of the assembly now is being decided by people who are not members of that assembly. And that's very unfortunate. So, yes, the president-elect has the right to pay attention to what is happening there, but not to the point where he's now being waited for to decide on who becomes what in that assembly.
All right, and finally on that particular report, on the omission of the North Central in the zoning of the National Assembly leadership, the APC chairman said he's tongue-tied talking about North Central.
He's tongue-tied.
What's tying his tongue?
Why? What tied his tongue?
About the North Central. I don't know, that's all he said. Well, that's all the report says.
So wait. When they drafted that memo and it was read by the policy secretary, did he not pass his table as the chairman of the party? So what tied his tongue now? Issue. You see that there's no ball to go back, if you understand what I'm saying.
Go.
All right.
Well, more details on page 2 of the Punch newspaper. All right, moving on now very quickly. We've almost run out of time, so we're going to be rushing a little bit moving forward. Also, from the front page of the Punch newspaper, we have Customs sees sack of military uniforms. The stories on pages 4 and 5 of the Punch newspaper. Just very quickly, just take the report there. The Nigeria Customs Service, Federal Operations Unit Zone B, Kaduna, said they intercepted a sack of military uniforms and others with a duty-paid value of 628 million naira in 1 month. Okay, and that these uniforms were en route to Nigeria from the Niger Republic. That's interesting. Okay, well, the report is on pages 4 and 5 of the Punch newspaper. Moving on, we also have federal government sends foodstuff to Sudan for stranded Nigerians, and that is on page 7 of the Punch newspaper. Lagos.
They sent food stuff there. Did we fry those food stuff? How did we, the logistics, the cost, how, I don't know. It's a bit.
You're curious.
That story. I'm a bit curious about that story. Yeah.
The National Emergency Management Agency on Thursday said they sent foodstuff to the Nigerian embassy in Sudan to cater to stranded Nigerians that are awaiting airlift in Port Sudan back home from war-torn Sudan. And to cushion the effects of food scarcity, they dispatched assorted food items approved by the Nigerian embassy. They were meant to cater for. The items consist of 100 bags of rice, beans, cartons of seasoning, cartons of spaghetti, 5 bags of iodized salt. Okay, so the items were airlifted on Thursday to Port Sudan by Tarco Aviation that brought 123 stranded Nigerians to Abuja.
All right.
Yeah.
So all right. That's fine. Okay. It's okay. Let's move on.
The story is on page 7 of the Punch newspaper. We also have a fashionable marks 97th birthday, laments Nigeria's woes. That's on page 7 also of the Punch newspaper. Now we have here above the masthead of the Punch, Buhari or Sibaju governors get 651 million naira hardship allowance.
Why are you quiet?
Hardship. What hardship are they going through?
Yes, what are you saying? The economy affects everybody, don't you think?
Okay. As many Nigerians continue to wallow in hardship, the president, the
writer of that report, what's the byline on that report?
Sami Olatunji.
That guy, okay, that's very good.
As many Nigerians continue to wallow in hardship, the president, Muhammad Buhari, the vice president, Yemi Osinbajo, state governors and their deputies may have enjoyed about 651.2 million naira hardship allowance in the last.
It's not a new money; they've enjoyed it already.
and they've been enjoying it in the last
All right.
8 years. The type of allowance, which is 50% of the annual basic salary, is also enjoyed by judges in the country. However, this particular report is focusing on the amount allocated for president, vice president, state governors, and their deputies, according to a document obtained from the website of the Revenue Mobilization and Fiscal Allocation Commission. It disclosed that
recently we talked about.
the president is entitled to 1.7 million naira annually as hardship allowance.
Sandra, recently the RNAFC talked about reviewing the salaries of the president and governors and all of that. But the reality is this, Sandra. Honestly, all of these monies don't really matter to me. Honestly, I don't think it's too much for us to give to our public officials. The problem is, what do we get in return in terms of performance? What are we getting in return? That's the question for me. Have you gone to an interview, for example, where the employer tells you, I can pay you any amount, but what are you going to bring to the table in terms of performance?
Can you offer?
What can you offer, really? So whether they get hardship allowance or no hardship allowance, their salaries are reviewed, increased or not, that's not the problem for me. The question is, for everything we give our public officials, what do they bring to the table in terms of performance when it comes to governance?
Right.
That's the question.
That's a very, very vital question. Well, more details of the hardship allowance of the president and vice president on page 17 of the Punch newspaper. Very quickly now, we also have debt servicing hits $112 million monthly, says CBN. That's the amounts that it costs to service all of our debts every month. And we also have here, article relieves PDP's glory days, says party moving backwards. And that's on page 11 of the Punch newspaper. All right, we also quickly run through what we have on the front page of Vanguard. The major headline, Senate presidency, Northern senators threaten revolt over zoning template. That's on page 5 of Vanguard newspaper. Be bold, reject Tinubu's anointed candidate, senator tells APC NWC. Hold your fire, will ensure justice, Adamu tells aggrieved. North Central APC insists on speakership. Party will revisit zoning formula, says Dave Umahi. Says one can't be asked to be patriotic if intentionally excluded. Details on page 5 of Vanguard.
I like that last one.
Well, we also have here Awujale at 89. You're an epitome of good character and integrity. And that's coming from Obasanjo, Tinubu, and Dakwa Abiodun. Stories on page 6. That's the Awujale of Ijebuland. We also have here, federal government votes 2.4 billion naira for Moshood Abiola Stadium High Performance Center. That's on page 30. Particulars of Kogi, Bayelsa, Imo governor candidates out today. That's on page 4. That's coming from INEC. Detention. I fear Kanu may die in DSS custody. That's from Mike Ozekome. Ozekome. State of the nation. Things are getting worse in Nigeria, says Fashinati. There's a whole lot of other stories we weren't able to look through New Telegraph. However, please stay with us. We'll be back by 8:40 as we dig deeper into one or two major trending stories this morning. This is Mainland 98.3 FM. Thank you for staying with us. We'll be back by 8:40.
Follow us on all our social media platforms on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at